Hello, everyone. My name is Haley Gould from Smith College, and I'm a Higher Education Advisory Council member and a planning team member for HEDreamin22. I'm also the lucky moderator for this session. We're excited to welcome you here where we'll be learning about how to use pictures and visuals to enhance the user experience. Of course, this session is presented by none other than MVP, dad of 3, and all-around superstar Nick Lindberg. Woo woo! He's from the University of Minnesota Carlson School of Business. While they're doing their presentation, I'll be monitoring the chat, which can be found just to the right of your presentation screen. I'll also be moderating Q&A, and if we have time at the end of the session, Nick might be able to answer a couple of those. But for now, let me go ahead and just turn it over to Nick to get started. I'm going to go off camera, but I'll be here to support you, Nick, if you need anything.
Perfect. Sounds good. Well, hi, everybody. Thanks for joining today. I'm excited to talk about a little something we have going on at our org at the University of Minnesota Carlson School of Management. As the title says, we're going to highlight constituent characteristics using pictures. And so while there's some text on these screens today, hopefully some of the images I have will ring a bell and resonate with you as we're talking through stuff. So before we get into all the goodness of what I want to talk about today, I just want to quickly introduce myself. I'm Nick Lindberg from the University of Minnesota Carlson School of Management. I've been in the ecosystem, for 13 years now, at the University of Minnesota for 3 years. And really, we're using our instance for a lot of corporate relations. And so we're doing a lot with career services, our centers and institutes, our executive education center. And then you name the system that we're using, whether it be Destiny One or Grad Leaders or Handshake or PeopleSoft or even spreadsheets. We have some sort of plumbing to feed that data over to Salesforce, make fancy charts and graphs like this bar chart in the center there. I'm on the Twitters, on the LinkedIn, and on the Trailblazer community. So feel free, if you have questions, post. Feel free to come reach out to me on those. I also go respond to Knickers. So feel free to use Knickers as you wish. So what we're going to be talking about today is a bit of a few things. So first, I always like to begin with the why. So I'll talk a little about the why. What are we talking about here today? A bit about the journey that we may be at different points. And then once we kind of see what we can do with that journey, talk about how we actually can prepare and implement for a solution like this. So time allows, we may not get fully into the implement side, but at least we can get into some of the implements. So that way, if we'll post these slides and things like that, you can at least kind of see some of the nuggets on how we make this happen in our org. So let's start with the why. Why are we talking about images and badges? So again, this is going to be kind of image friendly, but there's some text on this page. When you talk about the people in your Salesforce org or the stakeholders in your Salesforce org, there's probably a lot of different individuals you have, whether it be students or alumni or parents or faculty or staff or donors or prospects. You may have all these or some of these in your org. And usually when you're working with individuals, it ends up being kind of this mess where someone's a student that's also an alumni that actually is a prospect for another program. Maybe they're taking a adjunct professor, so they're faculty. They can meet a lot of these different things. And with Salesforce, we can lose ourselves really quickly with that information. Just to kind of show you an example of some of these things that we may be curious about. So at everyone's favorite university, Mock University, we may be curious about students, what programs are enrolled in, what's the expected graduation year. Maybe it's per prospects, what applications have they started? Parents, do they have any kids enrolled? Are they an alumni? If so, what year did they graduate? For things like administration, maybe you have different advisory councils or boards that people are part of. Are they current people? Are they former members? And then for faculty and staff, what courses have they taught? What articles have they published? These are all kind of key stats that you may or may not have in Salesforce, or you may or may not have in other systems already. But there's usually some sort of way where you want to aggregate this data and make it so people can understand someone at a glimpse very quickly. So with that, I'm going to start with a meme. I love memes. How many of you have had an org or you're having a user that says, I just can't find what I'm looking for in Salesforce. There's too much information overload being done. I had it happen this week. I had someone going, I have no idea where to look for this. I'm lost in Salesforce. Well, the goal of today is to kind of try to take that data that may or not be in the weeds of Salesforce and try to bring it up front and center for those individuals. The other little stat I want to kind of have resonate with you all today is that 90% of the information sent to our brain is visual. So our brains are very visual. A lot of our communication is visual. You're seeing me talk and using my hands on the screen here as we have the visuals of the slides. And at the same time, our brains can process images 60,000 times faster than images. So when we're starting to think about a database that's usually a lot of text and record-based and things along those lines, or maybe you have a number and dates and things like that, but that's still kind of text. How can we convert that? How can we game change that situation to make it not just text, but make it images? Because our brains naturally are taught to think in a visual aspect. So that's a bit about the why. Let's talk a bit more about kind of the journey that, and we may be at different points of this journey, but just kind of highlight some different key information points that we may have with Salesforce. So the first thing I want to kind of mention in this journey is that a lot of us probably are integrating information from other systems, or maybe having Salesforce utilize this, in that we have probably related records that live in Salesforce. I love to look at Salesforce as a web of relationships. And so we have kind of a core table in Salesforce, like the contacts, and there's all everything else. And a lot of us probably have these related records. So maybe applications they've started, what courses they've taken, maybe programs that they've enrolled in or have graduated from. Those are kind of key things that we have in an org like ours that has EDA in it. And that's great to have that data. If someone's looking for that data, they can hopefully find that record and see there. But at the same time, that could become daunting because it can get hidden in the related lists from there. So that's kind of where kind of it's great, but maybe the curse as well with it. Or maybe it's rose and thorn. Is that your line? Is it rose and thorn? I feel like you use all the time.
That's right. Yep.
Yes. So that's kind of the rose and thorn. The second way you all maybe done some stuff was maybe you're aggregating that data. So maybe you've using the standard rollup summary fields, or you've installed a tool like a declarative lookup rollup summary tool, or rollup helper, or even having flows do this. You could have rollup summary fields, or aggregating that data to say, here's the number of programs someone's graduated from or with. Here's a number. Here's the date they graduated. Here's the number of courses that they've taken. All those kind of different ways to aggregate that data. Rollups are awesome. I love rollups. That's one of the reasons why I got into Salesforce in the first place, thinking about how cool it was the ability to aggregate data. And that's really, when we start thinking about that kind of concept, what I want to introduce today is that we're only halfway there in the eyes of Bon Jovi. Let's live on a prayer here. Let's make some cool stuff happen. And what I want to kind of introduce to you today is this concept of a power of badges. You may be noticing that I'm using myself as an example here, and it's actually kind of fun. I'm an alumni of the school that I work at, and at the same time, I've become a great test example and a great use case to show different things like this. And so the power of badges is, this is my live record in our Salesforce org, and you'll notice that little Goldie icon with that hat on it. And the concept there is that hopefully you can understand with that hat that means that I'm an alumni of the program. At the same time, that Goldie can show that I'm a part of the University of Minnesota. Go Gophers, Sky Yuma, row the boat. And so that's kind of the concept of power badges, is you can use the data that you already have in Salesforce and convert that over to an image that hopefully someone can see that goes on from there. So how does this all happen, or how did we implement this at the University of Minnesota? So let me talk through some of the steps on how we got there. And of course, the possibilities are endless. Once you start thinking about this, your mind starts thinking about all the images and all the data that you can have. So let's prepare the data. And going back to, for kind of time sake today, I don't know if we'll get through all the implement side, but for sure we'll get through the prepare components, then we'll see where we can get from there. For sure, trying to allow some time for questions. So first, you have to start thinking about, okay, I want to put some cool images in Salesforce. The stuff that Nick is talking about is kind of cool. He's really making me want to row that boat. So what are some of the, when you're starting to think about, okay, what do I want to do? Start thinking about what are the facets of a content that are important to you, so you want to highlight. So maybe you have students. Go back to, okay, what are the students information I want to have? What are the parent information I want to have? What are the prospect information I want to have? What are those key individuals, or what are those key stakeholders, and maybe what represents those stakeholders? And at the same time, what's a way to kind of transfer what a student means to maybe be an image that could resonate with people? These are some just quick things I found off, we use and have found off of Google for ones that we don't actively have yet. but you can use things like royalty-free Google searching of royalty-free icons, where you can get that image and use it without having to ask for permission to do that. Sometimes you get some funky backgrounds, so maybe you have to use a tool, editing software like GIMP, to make those backgrounds transparent. Also notice the concepts of color, where the things like that dollar bill for the donor, or the blue chair, the seat and the chairs and the table for the administration, that kind of draws out your eyes. So be thinking about what can, not only just what's the image that can represent it, but maybe what are some of the colors that could go into that image to make our eyes more drawn to that image versus another one. The second idea to be thinking about when you're thinking about badge requirements, we may have individuals that are alumni of multiple programs at your school. And so could a little bit of a text allow you to know a bit more about the individual? So here's a record, you have Salesforce that you see 2 goldies. And we have some text to say someone was a part of the 2021 graduate level program, and someone else, or that same person was a graduate of 2017, the undergrad program. So that's where you can use little things like text to make, hopefully try to make that image a little bit more, or add some more context to that image and be able to understand a bit more from there. So that's actually, we just implemented this text a couple months ago, actually probably by the time that we were preparing for this presentation, we implemented that, and we've had some good feedback on that ability to add some text to hopefully make it resonate a bit more with our users. So how did I do this? I'm just kind of telling you, there's this concept, do these images, get this text, do all this stuff, but how did I actually do that? Well, all of our work that we've done is resonated off of Salesforce data. So when you start thinking about the different classifications or different stakeholders, maybe start thinking about what's the data that represents each of those badges, or where does that data live? Does that data already exist on that object? Because in order to make this all work, you have to have it live on the contact record. And so could you look at a parent record? Can you look at an account or some other related record from there? Is that supporting data from another object that you can get over? So can you do something like a roll-up summary field, or maybe some other form of automation to have a box checked or a date field get populated to make it all work? So those are some of the things to be thinking about from there. And so just to kind of show you some examples here, students, you can maybe think about, okay, what's the count of active program enrollments? So again, an EDA-ORG program enrollments, what are all the roll-up of all of those? Maybe alumni, a roll-up of all of the matched program enrollment dates that's not blank. So you maybe, instead of having an account, you have a date field that then you could have a little bit more abilities with. For things like administration, maybe they're using affiliations and maybe the current, and they have some sort of a role field or some other field to mark them as a council member. So those are some of the ideas on what we can do to make these that kind of transferring that data to what's kind of that logic behind it. So let's get over to the implement side. So we have some images, we have some high-level logic. How do we actually make the magic happen in Salesforce? Well, the first step you have to do is actually, once you pick that image and you've gotten that image looking good, is to upload it to Salesforce. I like using static resources because then you can use that across different instances, whether it be sandboxes, stretch orgs, all those different things. Static resources are a great place to go. And if I have a great use case in our static resources where we're actually combining all the images into one folder and be able to then deploy it across the different orgs. It works really nicely. The second part of this is all the magic behind this is part image and then part of formula field. And so we're actually creating a formula field in Salesforce with the type of text. And then in our case situation, we just have it called badges. We just have a formula field called badges. And we're using 3 key functions. We're using the if function out of formula fields. We're using the image function. And in situations that we have multiple, we're using the concatenate functionality. What I will mention is that if you start really getting into this, you may want to take that one formula field and break it into different sections. And so you could consider things like, here's all the student badges, here's all the external partner badges. All those types of things can be really beneficial for you if you want to start breaking those apart. At the end here, I have a slide to kind of quick show you how that all works. But here's just a sample formula. This is actually right from our org. We're taking, it may or may not make sense to you, but we're kind of saying, hey, go see if that graduate program date is not blank, and if so, display an image. And here's the size of that image. So that's really actually the concept behind how we have our formula in our org to show the alumni. You could take it a step further and you could add that little ampersand to combine multiple. So you have two if statements, and then you can use that ampersand to display two different images based on two different logic criteria. Lastly, if you want to do things like adding text, you can, again, use things like that ampersand, and then you can add text, whether that be from a rollup field or some other field that you have in Salesforce, or just some literal text that you want to have. Like in our case, we have CSOM grad. You can do some things like that to make it all possible. So that's kind of the latter part of how we can make this stuff happen. Lastly, now you have this formula field. You can do a lot with it. You can put it on the page layouts. I personally like using things like lightning actions when things like dynamic layouts actually hit from some of the core objects like contacts and accounts. That will probably be the preferred way to go. But I have a little hack that I've done where I create a lightning action with a type of updating a record and label it badges, and my page layout for that is just these formula fields. So actually not even updating the record, I'm just updating that page layout. So that's kind of a fun way to utilize this. Here's just a screenshot kind of showing how I'm just adding those fields on there. In this case, I have multiple fields I'm putting onto the page layout. And then what I can do with this is I can then add that related record to it's kind of actually on that record, but I can add it to the my lightning page from there. And you'll notice also I have a little key section here. And just to kind of highlight that, images hopefully are worth 1,000 words, but sometimes people go, what is that? I don't understand what that means. So feel free to use a key, add another tab and add a little key in there. Maybe use it. In our case, we have a rich text field doing some of that stuff. So you can do a lot of really good stuff from there. And lastly, this is just kind of a showcase of what you can do in an org that has a lot of badges and making stuff happen. So we have, this is a test org I've been playing with that has all the Disney characters, and you can see we have all the donor badges, we can see all the involvement, and then we have even a relationship alert to kind of say how well we're doing with them based on other factors. So that's a bit about all we're doing today, and hopefully you've gained a piece or two, and I think I maybe left 2 minutes or 3 minutes for questions here today.
You did so good, Nick. Look at you. By the way, that's a lot of information to cram into 20. Look effortless. And I know I'm excited to go make a couple of these. If anybody's got any questions, I know I've got one I posted in the Q&A. Feel free to post them there, and we'll try to get through one or two maybe. My question for you is
happy to talk about how long it took to implement. For us, it was probably this is an idea that I previously from the nonprofit sphere, and this was kind of a thing that myself and a couple others really were all into. And so when I came over to the U, it was kind of we just had to wait for the use case for it. So to implement it, it probably was to add, say, one field and kind of one image, probably half day's worth of my time to do all that. You know, once you get the hang of it, it can go really quick. We just added a new field on the account a week or two ago, and I think that was probably an hour and a half to probably do it end to end. A lot of the magic ends up being the image, getting the image to do what you want. And, you know, does the image actually represent what you want it to do? Those types of things.
Yeah, I totally get that. Another question from Megan. She asked if you've gotten any feedback from your users about badges, and what are they saying?
Yeah, so overall, the feedback's been really positive. We had a lot of the people are loving it because what we're doing is we're making it kind of front and center on the page layout. And so when you're kind of landing on the contact, it's basically above the line or above the scroll. So it's coming up front and center. So a lot of users are going from there. With the feedback I'm getting is we want more of them. So then I return back to them going, what does that mean? What do you want? And that's where the conversation's kind of installed right now. They want more of it, but they don't know exactly what they want yet. So hopefully we can make that little cyclical.
Yeah, you've got a cheering section. Yeah. Well, then one more question that was technically, it was in the chat. Just to confirm, Kate asked, are the badges just for internal use? They're not displayed out in communities or anything, right?
No, we don't have communities because it's a formula field, and you could have a community field, or it's a field that you could expose to others. So there could be use cases for this on the community side. We personally don't have any use cases yet, but that's definitely if you had a use case that you would have an image you would be willing to share, definitely doable.
Yeah. One last question, because we can, right?
Yeah.
Do you have any docs that you can share if we want to try this in our own org? That one's from Robert, who's wondering a little bit.
Yeah. I would be happy to post my slides to Haley. Maybe you tell me where I should post these.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to post these. I actually use this deck, so I'm a friend of mine kind of came up with this idea, and I was using their deck as kind of my implementation. It's doesn't tell you all the steps per se, but at least gets you a flavor, say gets you 60-70% of the way there. And so I've used this deck as like a remembering how to do this whenever I haven't done it for a couple months or so. So I'm happy to post these slides as that ability.
Yeah, so we are planning to post all of our sessions recorded sometime this weekend, hopefully, at least by Monday on our YouTube channel. There'll be a post about that on Twitter, so if you follow us there, you'll have a link directly. We'll also post that at the very end in our celebration. And then we will, with your permission, Nick, we'll share those slides as a viewable link in the YouTube link, so you can watch the video and have the slides all there at your fingertips. Thank you so much, Nick. Will you go to the next slide for me just so I can show that last screen? Okay. Yeah, go Gophers and row the boat, right? That's the saying that you were saying?
Yeah, row the boat.
Great. So if you're wondering what's coming up next, I wish we had just all day with Nick because he's got lots of wisdom to share. But go ahead and head on back to either the main stage /agenda, go join a networking table, right? Come on camera and talk with others, or visit some of our sponsors in the booths tab. We're also over there if you need any help or support. And of course, to exit this session, you just click on the back the back button in your browser, or the agenda button at the very top of your page. We hope you guys are having fun. Thanks so much.